Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. It's now 2017, and you are listening to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. How you guys doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everybody. I cannot complain right now.
Mm-mm.
Well,
no, all is well.
Yes. You know, I was thinking about that on New Year's Eve. You know, we were kind of counting off all the bad things that happened in 2006 and all the good things that happened in 2016 and the bad things that happened in 2016. And actually, it was not that bad a year, personally. But I'm still looking forward very much to 2017. How about you guys?
Same.
Same?
Same. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to making it a great year.
I am.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a better year than last year.
Yeah.
I truly think so.
I'm with you guys. I'm optimistic. I'm looking for a better year. I'm looking for, you know, just everything, just try to make everything better all the way around. I just hope we do.
Yeah. How about New Year's resolutions? Any of you have one? Or a list?
No.
Oh,
you know, I
so
guess
that's
my only
how
New
it
Year's
is.
resolution is I was just saying my only New Year's resolution was, I guess, to actually finish all the projects that I started in 2016, get them actually finished and see what happens, because several of them I drug my feet on just because, honestly, of fear of failure. So we'll just see.
Well, I am praying that you get a burst of confidence and that you know you can do it.
Yeah.
So I hope you do. I hope you complete those unfinished projects. You know, most people don't even do New Year's resolutions because they don't keep them. And they say the best advice out there is just have one. Just have one New Year's resolution. You know, most people say, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to be nicer to people. You know, they'll go down there. They'll have 10. Well, they say to be the most successful is just to have one. And then from that one, you have one to work on. And then if you don't succeed, then you only have one failure instead of 10. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, was your Christmas good? How about your Christmas? My Christmas was great. It was kind of, you know, it was like last minute great. It was like, it was really rough all the way up till time for it to happen, and then it was just wonderful. And so how about you guys? You all have a good Christmas? Yeah. Well, it was just a surprise for me. Usually my Christmases are just opposite. They'll be wonderful all the way up until Christmas, and then it's kind of a letdown. But this year it ended up good. So I was real happy.
Well, we're actually not really celebrating our Christmas till next weekend. My daughter lives with her husband in Mississippi, and I think it's Oxford, Mississippi, where they live, and they didn't get to come in. He only had a short time off for Christmas, and really there wasn't enough time for them to drive all the way in to see us and then drive back home. It would have been too hectic. So we all decided, you know, to wait. He's got some time off at the end of this next week, so they're going to come in and spend 2 or 3 days, and we're going to actually celebrate our Christmas then. So it's going to be great. I did have an enjoyable Christmas with some friends and my wife, and when my kids get home, I'll have an enjoyable Christmas with family.
You know, and that's the best thing. Even if it isn't family, sometimes you have friends that are just like family. As long as you are just sharing the joy with someone else, I think that is the most important thing about Christmas. Lauren has fallen out. I don't know.
She'll call.
Yeah,
I'm sure she'll get right back.
Yeah, our internet died at the house. We'll try to get it fired back up.
Okay.
That's all. Mine does that all the time.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, I'm back.
Especially, today, I know, Lori, you can attest the storms came through at your place just like they did mine, huh?
Yes. Yeah, we thought we had all the dead pine trees cleared out around the chicken house so that nothing else could cream it. And guess what? That north wind came and blew another pine tree from clear across property, but the top of it hit the chicken house and just right down the center of it. And I'm like, my goodness, I don't think God wants us to have a chicken house on that hill, so we're going to just move the whole darn thing. I mean, how about you? Did you have any damage?
Oh, yeah, I blew the top off of my little shed that I parked my Jeep under. Once it did that, it blew my cover that I have on my Jeep because I just have a bikini top, so I have an actual cover that goes over my Jeep. It blew that off my Jeep, so my Jeep got filled with rain, ruined my stereo, ruined my speakers, my amplifier, all of my electronics that were in my Jeep. Yes, ma'am. It just totally toasted my Jeep on the inside. So looks like I'm going to be pulling the seats and everything. I'm just going to gut the inside of my Jeep and start over from scratch.
Yeah. I hate that. It was just a weird deal. I woke up and it was, I was off today, and I woke up and it was just thundering, and I said, wow. I've got 2 dogs that are terrified of storms, so guess where they were? They were trying to dig in under the blankets with us, and I said, there must be a storm coming. And sure enough, but the worst one was later on in the morning. That's the one with the wind. And we were under tornado watch. How about you? Were you under tornado watch, Jeff?
Yeah, we were. Luckily, we got our our worst wind, like really early before the storms actually moved in. So during the actual storm, we didn't have a whole lot of wind, so we were lucky.
Yeah. Well, how weird is that? Be under tornado, only in East Texas can you be under tornado watch in January. That's just nuts.
Yeah.
But anyway,
exactly.
we have an amazing guest tonight who seems to be very, very popular. And so we'd like to go ahead and bring him on if Lauren will read that introduction. Hey, Jeff, I'm gonna let you talk to him. I'm gonna be in and out here. I'm afraid I can't trust my creepy cough to behave itself, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you pick it up after she. Okay, I know you're the man. You're the man, Jeff. Thank you, Lauren. Can you read that wonderful introduction?
Use my headphones. Read it? Hang on, Lauren's still out. I'm going to see if she can use my headphones. Can you hear me?
I can read it.
I got it.
Okay.
I'm hearing myself talk. It's just not cool. Okay. Oh, God. Okay. Sorry. We're having technical difficulties in the Smith house tonight. Okay. Nite covers Bigfoot radio.
It's usually me,
but Jim Sherman, Michigan Bigfoot researcher. Jim Sherman began studying all forms of strange phenomenon after getting the wits scared out of him watching In Search of, starring Leonard Nimoy. He recalls hearing footsteps outside of his door late at night and cowering under the covers. These steps were actually his own racing heartbeats. Fast forward many years later in countless cryptozoological and paranormal books later, and we find Jim again cowering inside a sleeping bag while something very real messes with his tent and throws rocks around. It was the last experience that made an important change in Jim's life. The longtime outdoorsman was afraid to hunt and camp. He found the woods, once a place of pleasant solitude, to now be forbidding and scary. He decided to attack the problem directly. He poured into research and found others who have experienced similar episodes while camping. Could his experience be related to Sasquatch? Jim decided to go on an expedition to find out. The Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, or BFRO, hosts these events, and there is an emphasis on learning through experience from people who have seen and experienced some pretty incredible things. Jim was hooked and was eventually asked to be an investigator for his home state of Michigan. Jim has been a featured speaker at multiple conferences, assisted with the production of and appeared on Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot, and organized a BFRO expeditions, and even wrote a book on the subject, Facing the Big Hairy Monkey Thing, looking for Sasquatch in the real world. In the normal world, he is a husband and has a very cool daughter. He teaches history and coaches both track and field and cross country. We welcome Jim Sherman, a Michigan Bigfoot researcher.
Hi, folks. Thank you very much.
Hey
Welcome,
there.
Jim.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the air. I'm excited.
Oh, man, it's our pleasure for you to be here with us, man. I mean, I tell you what, that list of accolades there, I mean, that's hard to compare.
It's been a fun ride. It really has been, and I've been exceptionally lucky to be able to hang out with some really cool people, and also equally lucky that my wife and daughter let me go out and play in the woods.
Oh yeah, I mean I understand that. I'm in the same boat, man. I'm lucky as all get out that my family lets me go chase all the tall and hairy and uglies that are out in the woods.
Yeah, if it's, the thing is, if it's
what
if
year
it's not,
did you
oh,
actually?
I'm
What
sorry?
year did you? I was just saying, what year did you get involved with the BFRO?
You know, I became an investigator in 2012, so it really hasn't been that long that I've been with the BFRO. My first expedition, I think, was in, 2011, I believe. So it hasn't been that long.
Excellent. Good deal, yeah. Which episode did you appear on in Finding Bigfoot?
There were a couple of episodes that I helped with. The first time that they came to Michigan, we ended up having the town hall meeting right around Houghton Lake. And the cool thing about that was I didn't appear on that episode at all. I just did the background work and some of the leg work, and I had the opportunity to work initially with the producers to find the witnesses, to help find the witnesses. I wasn't the only one, but also to take them to various areas in the woods because, you know, the production crew comes in and they have just a little over a week to put together an entire episode, and they can't find places and figure out where to fly helicopters and have a town hall meeting in that short amount of time. So they require local people to set it up. And so basically what part of my role was finding witnesses to come to the town hall meeting that were credible and interesting people. And so I called a whole bunch of people who I'd worked with and individuals who I'd gone into the field with, different people who I had contacted through the BFRO as a researcher, you know, people that had called in with sighting reports and was able to utilize those individuals. And I think the coolest part about that the first episode that I worked on was, number one, I'm not even going to lie, I was starstruck when I saw, you know, like Bobo and Cliff and Matt and Renee and stuff like that. I'm going to admit that. But I found that they were really cool individuals and surprisingly down to earth. I was able to spend a couple of nights camping with Matt, and we went out to an area where I have done a lot of research, and I'd been for years. and we ended up camping one night there, and my goodness, it was like 17 degrees. I think it was freezing, and but it was really cool. And he ended up hearing a howl, which wasn't as much as I'd hoped for. Of course, I wanted him to get hugged by a Sasquatch, but it was still pretty cool. And then I figured, done. Everything's done. After the town hall meeting, I had some really cool vocals with some really good friends of mine. But I'm like, okay, done with that. I don't have to worry about television production anymore. But I was called back about a year later to do another episode in the Upper Peninsula. And because I had done it before, it was a little bit easier for me. I kind of knew what they were looking for. And the first episode was Bigfoot and Wolverines. The second episode was, what the heck was, Super Youper was the second episode. And what was, I think, the most fascinating, the coolest part about that episode was I had initially thought I was just going to be doing the legwork and just getting the witnesses together. And luckily I had the help of some really cool people like Caroline Curtis up there and Rich Meyer and some really cool people that are good friends of mine. And so it was just going to be a great time. Well, when it came basically time for the town hall meeting, one of our star witnesses didn't show. And so the producer basically said to me, hey, I've got a seat for you over here. I'm like, oh, fine, I've got my own seat. And he's like, okay, and then you're going to be telling your story. And then there was a dramatic pause and a real sinking feeling. And I'm like, what do you mean my story? I don't want to be on TV. I've got a face for radio. And what ends up happening is I had to tell my story. And luckily I was there with a good buddy of mine, Larry, and we told a convincing story because it was real. It's some interesting things that had happened to us.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I saw something I still can't explain, and it bugs me to this day. I saw a single red blinking light, and it was responding to me, meaning as I was walking and moving, it was, whatever it was moving kind of behind a tree and then peeking back out, and it was really creepy. And had it been just that, it would have been creepy enough, but then something threw a big rock into the river, and there were more people there. It wasn't just me. Plus, I had audio and video running the whole time. Video, I couldn't catch anything. It was too dark. But the audio, I got the audio even of me asking questions. Does anyone else see that? And things like that. So it was exciting. It was scary. I watched myself on TV, and I looked like, I looked like I'm 3 feet tall against Bobo. Well, against normal humans, I look 3 feet tall, but against Bobo, I'm just like, really? And I'm like standing there. I'm like, can you at least put me on like a hill or something? But it was kind of cool that the biggest thing that I was worried about, I didn't want to look like a huge idiot. I really didn't. And I still wasn't sure about what I saw. So even in the episode, you don't hear me say, yeah, that was a Sasquatch or anything like that, because I couldn't. But I didn't want to look like a huge fool. And luckily the producers were very kind and edited probably 90% of what I said out. So I sounded relatively intelligent. But it was a scary but fun thing to do. And like I said, I had the opportunity to meet with the cast and crew. The crew is really cool. You never see them. You never see any of the members of the crew. They're really cool people, nor do you see most of the production team. But the cast themselves, I spent a lot of time with Matt. I spent some really cool time with Cliff. He's super down to earth. And Renee is like one of the nicest people in the world and really went out of her way to be nice to my daughter. And so I was really, really, really impressed with all of them. And so it was a great experience. And who knows? Not gonna have a chance to help them probably anymore. But it was fun while it lasted. It was scary to be on TV, and every once in a while I see myself come up. I'm looking through the channels, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's my episode. And I watch it, and I'm just like, oh.
I know, man. It's cool whenever you have people messaging and say, hey, man, I'm watching you on TV.
I know. And it's like, I'm sorry. And my poor wife, I'm just like, no, seriously, I'm trying to be cool, sweetie. And she's like, yeah.
But you know what, the funniest or the strangest thing, I found whenever I did, the best little Bigfoot in Texas, I was with Matt and Bobo and Cliff and all of them for about 9 days, 8 or 9 days total, while we went all over Texas messing around. And, Renee, I found her to be very conversational.
Oh, yeah.
Different than what you would think. And she's not nearly as big a skeptic as they portray her to be.
Then you've definitely been around her.
I mean, she has her own views. She has her own views. And I mean, they are hers, and some of them are pretty unique, and some of them are pretty insightful, I mean, she's more skeptical, I would say, on what's being presented all the time. You know what I'm saying? That, a lot of what people are presenting is misidentification, and some of it's just flat out make-believe and things like that, than she is on the fact that they don't exist, period, never, won't, forget it, no wavering. Because like I said, she and I had some good conversations about it, and she was not as, what I want to say, she was, a lot of people who are skeptics are the kind that I don't care what kind of evidence you bring forward, I'm not going to believe it no matter what. But she was like, look, you bring me some good evidence, and I'm right there with you.
Yeah, she actually told me. She said,
so,
please put me on Bigfoot. She wants the evidence.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, she was very pleasant to be around. A bit like that. Renee was okay. I mean, she's a cool person now. Bobo, that's like one of my best friends. I mean, homeboy spent days with me, and it was like we were born to be out there in the woods together, because he was like the coolest human being ever.
That's awesome.
I can't say enough good stuff, about Bobo, because I mean, he's just Bobo. I mean, good Lord, the man is. You meet him, and 10 minutes later, you feel like you've known him for 25 years.
It's astonishing.
That's just the way
it just is. And, the funny thing is, I spent by far the least amount of time with Bobo out of all the times that I was helping out with production or anything like that. I just didn't get the opportunity to see him that much, which is a bummer, because I would have appreciated that, certainly.
Yeah, and I regret that I got the least amount of time with Cliff, because Cliff, being more of the technical, like evidence-driven, like educational kind of guy, that you really want to sit down and have a good intellectual conversation with. And I got to spend the least amount of time with Cliff. I only got like really one full day. And then, of course, you know how it is whenever you're filming. I mean, you don't have time to visit with anybody. I mean, you're too busy doing everything that's got to be done. So,
yeah, I spent most of my time trying not to get in the way.
Right? Exactly. I mean, it was cool. Of course, everybody knows me and Matt don't get along, so I'll just leave that there. I mean, Matt is Matt, and God bless him. And
we almost lost Matt.
Like
Let me tell you one really quick thing. When we were out, we were taking him out near Houghton Lake area, and it was myself and a cameraman, and Matt went off in one direction, and so we were staying there, just waiting for him to come back, and he didn't come back. And we're like, man, he should have been back like 15 minutes ago. What's going on? And so we're actually starting to worry, and I'm like, we've lost one of the stars of the show, But eventually he came back. I mean, I think it was an hour later or something like that, from a completely different direction than we anticipated him coming back. And he was having a blast. He had no clue that we'd lost him, and we never told him. And in fact, no one knew until just now. Now everyone knows. But it was fun.
He knew exactly where he was. He was looking for Bigfoot
the whole time. But it put a little bit of scare in us. So That's good fun.
Exactly. Well, I want to get back a little bit to your encounter.
Okay.
Go over that just a little bit, like take us there and take us through what happened.
Sure.
And then when we get through with that, I want to play some one of your audios and go from there.
Oh, I love that stuff. Okay. Well, what's interesting, because as your show intro was going through, I was clicking off all the cool things like UFOs, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and all that stuff that absolutely intrigued me as a young person, and loved it. Just loved anything that was paranormal, anything in the sky, anything in the lakes, anything that was creepy and scary. Loved it. And all the way through basically elementary and middle school, really into it. Once I got into high school, it just kind of went away for various reasons, whether it was track and field or girls, I don't know, but just stopped paying attention to it. But then it was the year that I was going, it was the end of my freshman year of college, because I had worked in landscaping that whole summer, and I said to my dad, hey, we got to go out on a long camping trip. He's like, okay. And we packed up all of our gear in we had this gigantic Coleman canoe, which weighed 5,000 pounds. And we traveled up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan near a place called a little bit south of Munising. And it's a canoe-in type of a place. You have to, from the parking lot, you portage your canoe, and then you canoe across the series of lakes, and as far as you want to go is as far as you can basically go. And there's campsites set up in various areas, and we basically set ourselves up in a really cool spot where I knew that there would be a lot of pike fishing, which is the real reason that I wanted to go there. And so we set ourselves up. We portaged all the way through, had a great day. At the end of the day, after the camp was set up, we had just enough time to do a little bit of fishing, caught some pike, and then we had a nice fire going. And my dad said, it's about time to go to bed. It must have been a little after 11, because at the time it was light, really long. And even then, it never seemed to get 100% dark. But he went into the tent, and I sat outside next to the fire for a while. And eventually got tired, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna turn in too, and crawled into this little tent. And my dad was, I think I woke him up when I crawled in, and whatever. Crawled into my sleeping bag, and was just about ready to sleep. I have no idea about the time. It was one of those, have I been asleep? Am I drifting off? I'm not sure. And I looked over at the glow from the fire. You couldn't see the fire itself through the fabric, but you could see the glow, and the glow had kind of gone down. So I knew I'd been laying there for a little while. And then I started to hear some movement behind me. And the movement was something walking through the woods. And it was some crunching and things like that. And so when it's just crunching, it could be any number of things. It could be a chipmunk. I mean, at night, a chipmunk sounds like a bear, but it was making more noise than that. And as it was getting closer to me, and it was heading toward my head. I was laying on my back, looking up. As it was heading toward my head, I remember thinking to myself, well, that's not a chipmunk. That's way too big. It's probably a raccoon. Oh, that's too big to be a raccoon. Maybe it's a deer. And I'm trying to think of things that aren't spooky. I'm not going to go to a bear immediately or anything like that. But it got loud, and it walked up, and then I started to hear the branches snapping. And that's different. When a branch snaps, it's something bigger. It's like a deer or a bear, because usually a raccoon is not going to snap a branch, because these are pretty decent sized, snaps that I'm hearing. And I'm like, wow, there's something big behind me. It must be a bear. And that was what was in my head, which was disconcerting. I wasn't happy to have a bear out there, but I'm like, whatever, it'll probably go away. Well, then what happened is it came right up to the back of the tent and started breathing. Again, I'm thinking it's a bear, no problem. And at this point, I'm not gonna tell any stories here. I was scared. I mean, hearing this happening, really put a little bit of fear in me. I had no weapons or anything like that. And whatever it was, I'm looking up. I'm basically, and I don't know how it was, but I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I'm sure it was just fear, but I couldn't move. And I was like trying to move, and it was spooky. And I looked up at the back of the tent, and I saw the back of the tent press in. And what I thought was that must be, thinking of the size of it, it must be the forehead or the top of the head of a bear, because it was like dinner plate sized pushing in. And what I did was I tried my best to hit it. It sounds dumb, but that's all I could think to do. I'm like, if this is a bear, I'm going to scare it. And I wanted to yell, but I don't even know if I made any noise. I really don't, but I remember wanting to scream and sound really big and manly. And I was able to reach up and strike whatever it was that was pressing in with a fist. And I hit it, and it was weird because it wasn't solid, like a bear's head would be. It gave, and that was weird. And then I heard just this strange, not bear-sounding noise, and then whatever it was casually walked a ways back. Casually, as in it sounded like a guy, like a person. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is really, really creepy. And then once it got back a ways, I'm estimating, it went back maybe 20 feet, then it took a branch, like a tree, and I found the tree and started, it was a live tree, and started swishing it back and forth extremely aggressively, making a ton of noise with this tree, swishing it back and forth. At that point, my dad woke up, and he said to me, he's like, did you just punch a bear in the nose? And I said, I don't know. And I'm scared to death. And moments later, no kidding, my dad is snoring. And so the rest of the night, I sat there, and I listened, and this stupid thing walked around, I say stupid thing because it's really scary, walked around my campsite numerous times. The entire time it sounded like a guy, because it sounded bipedal. And occasionally I would hear things that sounded like they were being tossed, because you could hear things hit branches, like, and then it'd come from the other side much later. Just really, really creepy stuff. The next morning, I don't know if I slept that whole night. I was scared to death. Went on with that type of behavior, that type of activity, for 2 more nights, until I finally told my dad that we had to go. And and it continued. The second night, there was a dead tree was knocked over, and I went the next day and found it. I mean, I looked for footprints. I scraped the ground near the tent to try to make it so that you could see a footprint. I also didn't, no one knows this, I think I kept this from everybody, but I put punji stakes up. I sharpened sticks and shoved them in the ground. I said, nothing's going to, sneak up on me. And I slept with I laid with a hatchet the next 2 nights. But it happened basically probably a half hour after the fire died down. And I will tell you, I put a lot of wood on all those fires. My dad's like, why are you putting all the wood on it? And I'm like, how are you sleeping through this? And he did. I was petrified. And the issue is, I've been hunting my entire life, camping, fishing, playing in the woods. I used to play in the woods alone with a BB gun forever. I mean, that's just what I did for fun. The next hunting season, I didn't go out at all. And then the next couple of years, I graduated from college, and I'm like, I want to get back into hunting. But I found it almost impossible to walk out in the dark. And then once I was established in my tree stand, I'd get out of it before it got dark. So I wasn't a very successful hunter. I was terrified, and I needed to do something to try to figure out what was scaring me, what it was. To this day, my dad still thinks it was a bear, but that's an interesting, upright, walking bear that throws things. I don't know. I have no idea what it was, but some of the behavior was similar to, it's similar to primate aggressive territorial behavior, the knocking down of trees, the taking branches and swishing them back and forth. And usually bears don't throw rocks. I mean, I've never known that to happen, and that was something that was definitely happening. It was either rocks or little branches that were being thrown. So that's what got me interested in studying weird behavior in the woods, because I was scared and I didn't want to be scared anymore. And I figured I better take control of this, or I'm just never going to be in the woods again. And that's something that the woods is where I decompress. The woods is where I have fun. It's always been that way. And I might as well live in the big city, because I wasn't going in the woods. And so luckily, through my research, I found other people who'd had similar instances or similar experiences. And then I found, this is the craziest thing in the world. The BFRO has Bigfoot expeditions. That's number one. That's the silliest thing in the world. A Bigfoot expedition? Come on. And so I went on it. And now I organized them. And it's because I went out on an expedition, had a blast. I was out looking for what was scaring me, and I found that the first night on that first expedition was the first night in so many years that I slept beautifully and soundly in my tent, and I haven't had a problem since. And so it was kind of therapeutic for me to go out searching for some big hairy critter in the woods. It seemed to work. So that's kind of how I got started.
Excellent. That's and that's kind of the general thing, for most all of us, I mean, we get that first scary kind of encounter or whatever, and you either turn it into fuel for what you do next, or you stay scared to death and quit going in the woods.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of now, if my colleagues are ready. Let's see here. Hang on just a second.
I'm ready. Just let me know which one.
Which one? Yeah. Just let us know which one you want to play, and we'll play it and talk about it, or talk about it then play it, or do both.
Well, you guys have had the opportunity to listen to them. Which one do you think the listeners would like most?
Oh my gosh, I think they'd like every single one of them. I did. I couldn't make up my mind.
I'll tell you, I would rather listen to them than listen to me speak. My goodness.
Oh no.
This is going to be new to me. I have not actually had the opportunity to hear them yet, so it's going to be my first time hearing them.
And I wanted to say that there is one of the recordings, and I don't know which one it is, but I have another recording similar to it that I would like to play afterwards. But,
please.
Awesome.
Okay, which one do you want to hear first?
What?
So aggravating.
I'm looking at the ones that I sent you.
Uh-huh.
Let's do this one. Let's do the one called The Singing Howls.
Oh, yeah, that's an awesome one. Because awesome.
There's a cool story behind that one, too, so why not?
Okay. Why don't you tell us the story first, and then we'll play it?
Absolutely. Basically, I received a phone call from these two wonderful ladies that were living in Isabella County, right around the center of Michigan, and they said, you know what, I think we might have captured some vocalizations that might be a Bigfoot. We're just interested to see if you might want to listen. And I'm like, sure, sounds like a great idea. And they said, do you want me to send a CD? What would you like? And I'm like, yeah, sure, send a CD, sounds great. Or, you can send it, online, however. And so they mailed me this CD. And it was funny because I was at school, it was in between classes, and I had the opportunity to listen to it. I put this CD in, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Because there were some things that I was hearing that I had never heard before, and some crazy, crazy stuff, and howls and whoops and things like that, traditional things you might hear from a Bigfoot show, but then also things that I had never heard before. and things that were similar to like Ron Moorhead's Sierra sounds, like the samurai chatter type of things. And so I contacted these ladies, and I'm like, do you have any free time? And they're like, sure, come on up. And so I threw all my gear in my vehicle, and I drove up there, and it was, it was like a 2-hour drive, no big deal. And I mean, I'd only talked to these people, on the phone, and I'm like, as I'm driving up there, I'm like, what's their axe murderers? I'm going to end up, in someone's like cellar or something like that for the rest of my days. But they turned out to be the coolest people in the world. And so what I did is I went there. They walked me through the area, and they had like 80 acres. And I set some recorders out. And at one point, while I was setting out a recorder, I was all alone in the middle of this field. And it was so noisy because the snow, this was in February, the snow was deep and it was crunchy on the top. And so I'm just like getting out into the middle of this field. And at one point I stopped so I could get my recorder set the way I wanted it. And I heard behind me some noise that sounded kind of like whispering, kind of like, that's kind of what it sounded like to me. And so I turned around expecting to see, the property owners, and there was no one there. And I'm like, that's weird. And then I heard it again, but this time a little more to my right. And it was again kind of like kind of like that. At this point, I'm freaking out. And way, like 200 yards to my left, I hear this really loud whistle in the woods. And I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't pleasant at all. And I had planned on putting the recorder much farther in the field. It didn't get near that far. I just set it down and ran, but walked in a very controlled manner back. And it was scary, but later on that day, we heard more whistles, and the horses were acting freaky. And the lady said to me, "Whenever the horses act freaky, something big is going to happen. Watch, you'll see them kicking and stuff like that." And sure enough, they were. And so it gets to be late. It's like, my goodness, it's like 11 o'clock, and we walk out. I brought them with me. I didn't tell them why, but I brought them with me to pick up the recorder. I was scared. And we got that, turned it off, walked back to the house. I said, okay, well, ladies, I got to go. It was midnight, and I had a long drive ahead of me. And I had just said, I'm going to go take off my boots because I can't drive in my boots. And right when I said that and turned away, we heard this unbelievable growl come from the woods. And I turned around, and it came again. And it felt as if, like, seriously, like someone had put a speaker right next to my chest and really hammered the bass. And it was like a brrr in my chest. It was like it was directed right at me. And I'm just standing there, and the ladies looked at me. Their eyes are huge. I'm sure my eyes were huge. And I looked down at my recorder, which was not on. And I'm like, rookie, I didn't get it. I didn't get that first unbelievable growl. So I clicked it back on. I'm just unbelievably mad at myself, and we sat there for a while, nothing. I gave them my recorder, and I was just mad, like kicking myself. And as I head back to my car, we could hear the growling occurring again, but from a lot farther away. And it was captured, but it's not that loud. But then I walk back up to the ladies, and we start to listen, and what we hear is two vocalizers. And what these two vocalizers are doing is, one of them, it's almost like they're using some kind of like sound echolocation or something to that effect, because the one that growled was closer, like really close, just across the street. It was making this sing-song kind of a howl. And then a ways away, and I have no idea how much further away it was, you could hear a repeat sing-song type of a thing. And then later, like not much later, like 2 minutes later, you'd hear a sing-song farther away. And what was happening was, I think, whatever was making the noise that was close had a buddy that was behind it. And this first growler then did a sing-song thing, moved back behind the other individual, if you will. And then that individual then made a sing-song, and then moved almost like they were leapfrogging to get away from where we were. And we had a decent idea of where they were based on when dogs would bark. Like when certain dogs barked, I knew basically what yard they were near. But they ended up, we could hear them as they got almost a mile away. You could still hear them. It was astounding. And so the singing howl is just a small snippet of one of those calls. And throughout the course of, basically it was 20 minutes that we were listening to them, they did these singing howls multiple times. So it's astonishing. And I would have thought it was an owl, or I would have thought it was a bird or something, had we not gotten the first unbelievable growl and then recorded subsequent growls. Because it's easy to just say, oh, that's an owl. Well, an owl can't produce a growl like this one was. I mean, it sounded almost like someone fired up a snowmobile right next to me. It was pretty crazy and scary, to be frank.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's play that sound.
All right. And what's interesting about it, you'll hear that one on, and then you'll hear the other one, and it's quieter, and then you'll hear the other one, it's louder, and it was just amazing. And you can even hear it in that recording. You can hear my friend go, like she's breathing in, because it's scary. It was a really scary thing. And I have longer versions of that with my analysis on my YouTube page, if anyone's ever interested in looking at them, because the whole recording's 20 minutes. You don't want to listen to 20 minutes of it, but I basically cut it down to 2, and the 2 minutes is the 2 coolest minutes. And if anyone's interested, you can look under Lord Cryptid, which is my YouTube name, LORDCRYPTID. I had to sit and think about that. But if anyone wants to look at my YouTube page, you could do that. Or you could just, on YouTube, just put in singing howls, and it'll come up also. But what I do is that's what I like to do is any kind of audio that I collect, I get it, I analyze it, I put it on a spectrogram so you can look at it, and then what I do is I try to figure out what it isn't, because I think that's probably the most important thing. You know, is this a loon? Is this a fox? Is this a barred owl? 90% of what you hear is a barred owl out there. And then you can figure out, maybe once you figure out what it's not, then it opens up what it might be. And none of this is definitive, certainly. And I've never had a real good face-to-face, hey, shake your hand type of a thing with a Sasquatch. I know this is, and my friends think I'm crazy, but I'm still very skeptical, even when I see crazy things, because, and even when I record crazy things. What it's going to take for me is I think I'm just going to have to be like picked up and cradled or something by a Sasquatch, and then I'll be 100% on board. But I don't know. Maybe that makes me a little bit more. I like to think it makes me a little bit more, I don't know, credible when I'm looking at evidence, because I'm not 100% yes, but I'm also not 100% no. Because if you're 100% no, nothing is going to be good enough. If you're 100% yes, everything is good enough, and neither one helps. And so I try to be in the middle, and maybe I've been successful. I really don't know, but well,
I think that's a wonderful capture, Jim. I think it's a wonderful capture. We are at intermission. We'll be gone for about 4.5 minutes, and when we come back, we'll be playing a remainder of, and he's got even more spectacular audio. The singing howls, that was awesome. That was awesome. So anyway, we'll be back.
Cool.
Okay, everyone, welcome back from intermission, and our guest today is Jim Sherman, Michigan Bigfoot Michigan Bigfoot researcher, and he is just a fantastic guest so far. We played Singing Howls. It was an audio that he had done, and we've had a request to play it again. So we're going to play that audio again, Jim. I want to hear it again. I tell you what, if I heard something like this, I would think Bigfoot. That is exactly what I would think it was. But that's me. Okay, here we go. It is amazing.
The crazy part about that was that, number one, it was recorded, which is, and I will tell everyone, whenever you go out into the field, bring multiple recorders. Make sure that you turn one on before you even get out of your car. And
amen, that's right.
Seriously. And then, I mean, and I have backup recorders. I'm looking at 5 of my recorders right now, and that's not all of them. I mean, I will put one, I'll roll the window down, put one on the top of the car just as I get out. And then even when I leave a location, I often do a false exit. I'll just leave a recorder, I'll drive away, and then I'll wait a little while, then come back and think I'm really sneaky. But every once in a while you pick up something funny. Just my goodness, it was in July. I was up in the UP, and I left my campsite. I set a recorder on the table, kind of hid it, and then I drove off, and then I came back maybe half an hour later, and you can hear my Jeep, it's pretty loud, coming down the road, and then you can hear me as I turn into the camp area. I was the only one there. And then as I'm driving up, you know, you can hear me get closer and closer. You can hear a beautiful wood-on-wood, bam, almost like a he's coming back type of a thing, which was really kind of cool to have happen. And that was just a couple months ago. It's kind of awesome. So.
Wow, that sure is. That sure is. I've had the experience. There was one area that was actually right across from where I lived, and every time I entered the woods, I would get a knock. And every time I left the woods, I would get a knock. And it didn't matter who was with me or anything. It was always you get a knock going in and a knock going out.
And you know,
cool.
if you can eliminate like a weird, nosy, creepy neighbor, you know, that's watching you at all times, you know, and banging on, you know, then it's like, well, what the heck is out there? It's not, you know, it can't always be a woodpecker, you know. It's just interesting, you know. So no, I get it. It's interesting. And the place that I got a lot of my recordings from, they because we had a recording going on all the time, they would leave the house, go into the barn, there'd be a bang as they went into the barn, and then there'd be a bang as they opened the door, then as they went into the house. Once the door shut, there'd be a bang, and often there were multiple bangs. In fact, one time I got a little tap that was really close to the recorder, and then that elicited a louder bang, which elicited a home run bang from farther out in the woods. And so what it looked as if it looked as honestly as if there were 3 individuals of whatever they were. One was really close to the property, like within the property itself. One was just outside near the field, and one was way in the woods. Now, what it was that was making those bangings, I have no idea. But it happened often enough that it was something intelligently responding to these ladies leaving and entering their home, which they eventually got to the point where they weren't creeped out about it. I was, you know, hundreds of miles away. But, you know, they'd send me this audio, and they're like, what's this? And I'm like, oh, that's something walking under the recorder that's 20 feet from your house. No big deal. You know, it's just interesting.
Wow. Well, okay, we have, let me see, I've got a lot of recordings up here. Let's see, barn vocals.
Oh, the barn vocals. That one's an interesting one because of, for a couple of reasons. One is the location. This thing occurred really close to Detroit Metro Airport. You're not supposed to have any big old hairy bipedal critters that are not humans near like the Romulus area. You know, you're not supposed to have that. But what's interesting is, and it's still hard to believe. I did a lot of searching, a lot of walking around that area, and there actually are a lot of interconnected riverways that go through there, and what we call metro parks attached. And then at the end of the runways, there's a ton of woods there because they just didn't build it up, because you don't want to have a whole bunch of houses at the end of a runway. But basically what happened was that this lady who did not want to be ever mentioned, never wanted to be, didn't even want her report to be on any website or anything like that. She did okay, things like this, but she wasn't looking for anything. She just wanted answers. She would take her cell phone out and record some really weird noises that seemed to be coming from just behind her barn. And she kept telling me, she's like, do you think these are homeless people fighting? And I'm like, I don't know. I hadn't heard them. And so what she did is she played me the audio, and I'm like, wow, that is weird. There's some really weird screaming and howling coming from back there. And then she said, I've got some other things that have happened. And she started to explain some things that I've experienced, but not that at the time, this was many years ago, weren't really common knowledge. Weird things like she was hearing what she said was a person who sounded like they were speaking Amish outside of her house at night. And she said it kind of sounded like a deaf Amish person. And I'm like, okay, well, that's extremely descriptive. And she would tell me what it sounded like, but she could never get it to record. She would have a recorder going, and she could hear it, but she couldn't, for whatever reason, get it recorded properly. But then she's like, and whatever it is, keeps taking all these stupid sticks across my trails and putting big X's across my trails. And she would get mad, and she'd knock them down. And then one day after she knocked down these X's, something came up and pulled up a whole bunch of her pine trees that she had just planted, and like pulled them all up. And she's like, oh, something was mad at me removing their X's. And I'm like, oh my. And then she started to get really interesting gifts. I mean, gifting, I know it sounds kind of weird, whatever, but that's what she called it.
It's not.
She said she was getting these gifts, and they were primarily peacock feathers that would appear on her porch, and they were set there very deliberately. And that was it. Now, here's the thing. She had pet peacocks, so it's not as incredible as it sounds, like something is going to the Detroit Zoo and then taking the bus back. But for whatever reason, these things were appearing in a manner that seemed intelligently placed, not put there by the wind or a cat or something like that. And so when you put all those stories, and I've talked with her for a lot, she's a great lady, and you put it with the audio, it tells a pretty compelling story, because she even sent me some pictures that she found of handprints in mud, which were also pretty compelling. So, which I can't show you, but still pretty cool stuff. But take a listen to the audio. It's just really, really kind of weird.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Okay, I want to play that one more time. I was trying to get the audio just right because the crickets were kind of loud, so let me play it one more time.
Sure.
Well, Wow.
That was recorded with a cell phone, you know, and the lady was standing out there with a cell phone. That's why, I mean, the recording quality is not the best, but the fearlessness of the witness is the best. Because, I mean, standing out there holding a cell phone, hearing that stuff coming, and she said it sounded like it was either from inside her big old barn or from behind it. Either way.
Wow.
That's some spooky stuff, and her dogs were going crazy, and so I mean, yeah, it obviously it could certainly be a person, and when you listen to it, and you analyze it, it is within human range to be able to do something like that and make that kind of noise, but that's crazy.
Well, I'd like to play something for you. This was recorded by me in Mississippi on December 15th, 2002. And tell me if you don't notice similarity.
All right.
What do you think, Jim? Does it sound similar?
There is a similarity, particularly at the beginning, at the beginning of each of the howls, because it sounds like it sounds like a person is really trying to scream, and then it tails into a howl, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And
what was really unique about it was there was a vocal replying, this is an old and degraded recording, and but the vocal was replying. It was very high-pitched, wheezy reply.
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
Every time he hollered, or I say he was a he, every time one subject roared, the other subject would respond in a high-pitched, wheezy kind of response across the riverbed from where the other one was.
That is cool.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
I think something else that is fascinating about it is if you put those two recordings side by side, the cadence of the calls were relatively similar as well. The howl, then the pause, then the howl.
Yes.
And I know that the one that I had, there was a splice in the middle, and I made it very clear so you could hear the splice in the middle, but the rest of it was in real time. And so that's kind of cool too. When you hear things like that, I immediately think, I'm always going to think, even with the one that any of the recordings that I do, I'm like, okay, is this a coyote? When you have a howl like that, because coyotes make unbelievable noises. And but then you get there's just these little things that tweak it in another direction, and like
maybe that's
it's
the way a Mississippi
sounding.
coyote sounds, but I know down here in East Texas they don't sound that way.
It's just crazy.
Not at all.
And
yeah,
you know something that's also relatively new in Michigan. We have a heck of a lot more wolves than we've ever had before. Every once in a while, you'll pick up a wolf, and usually they're alone. But we also have coy dogs, the hybrid coyote dogs, and they make a different noise. And I've gotten some of those, and so I'm always worried. I'm like, oh my goodness, am I just recording something that's not supposed to be there? You know, and because people will tell me, they're like, well, what you've recorded is an elk, and I'm like, fantastic. It's, you know, about 200 miles south of where elk usually range, but it could possibly happen. You know, I want to know that. You know, if someone has one of my vocals and says, I know exactly what this is, and they can back it up, I'm ecstatic. That doesn't bother me. In fact, I like to get that type of information. You know, some people I'm sure are very frustrated and they think it's an attack. Nope. I'm putting it out there so people can tell me what it is, because I don't know. And I mean, there's a lot of animals, you know, there's a lot of animals out there that I may not have heard and may be moving into areas where they haven't normally been. Like we have mountain lions here. We have pets. I mean, it's creepy to know that there are cougars out here. But you know, they don't make the scariest noises. The scariest noises are made by porcupines and barred owls, of all things. Porcupines make a noise that sounds like someone is mumbling, and it's really creepy. And barred owls sound like, I will tell you, barred owls sound like the Planet of the Apes, the entire Planet of the Apes is about to attack you.
Oh, yes.
So,
yeah.
It's crazy.
I thought for the longest time I had chimpanzees in my woods until I found out that's what a barred owl sounds like when they're engaging in a group conversation. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Okay, we have four-moan and howls.
Okay, the four-moan howl, sorry.
Yes. What's the story on that?
Basically, what I get with some of these is this one is also from the location in Isabella County, Michigan. And I was trying to figure out, is this thing is it a loon? Is it an owl? And I'm just trying to figure out what these things are. And so what I did is I took some of the best examples of some of these types of howls, and I just call this the four moan howls because it happens to do it four times. But because I want to be able, because it's pretty clear, I wanted to be able to put it up against known animals and see, you know, what is this not? And it's a heck of a lot of fun. And I've even checked with, like I contacted Michigan State University, I've contacted the Detroit Zoo, I've contacted the University of Michigan, and the only people that got back with me were Michigan State University. And with some of these vocals, they actually asked me, they said, what zoo were you at? And I said, I wasn't at a zoo. I was in central Michigan, and some of these, they're like, these sound like howler monkeys. I'm like, I don't know, unless someone lost a howler monkey somewhere in the woods. But the four moan howls is also from that location in Isabella County, and I think it's a pretty cool series of vocals.
I heard that before.
Okay, I'm sorry, because all of a sudden it cut out. I couldn't hear a thing.
Yes, well, that was because I was this nasty cough. I have to mute myself. I heard that before, back in 2000, before I ever knew anything about Sasquatch. We were out on the lake, and I heard that moan, that, whoa, you know, I heard it, and everything on the lake just went dead quiet. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. There had been some coyotes cutting up. Everything just went dead quiet. It scared me. It scared me. I never felt such fear because I didn't know what it was, because it did the moan, and then it did a roar, and then, you know, I knew of nothing that could howl and roar. Nothing.
Yeah,
so, yeah, I would like to play it one more time because.
Oh, absolutely.
In the very
it cut
first
out for me,
part,
and I couldn't hear it.
Yeah. Oh, it cut out for you? Okay,
yeah, I
let
couldn't
me
hear
play
a thing.
it again. Okay, let's go.
You know, the interesting part about that one is the way I have my recorder set up, or used to, you could kind of get an idea of where various individual callers were because of how loud they would be in each recorder and from what direction it was coming from. You know, you could tell I'm getting most of it out of the right mic, and so, that's the direction, you know, things like that. And there were at least 2 vocalizers in that series. I had a tendency to think it was 3, but
right, I do too.
Because you get the Ohio style moan, and then you have little whoops and things like that. But then at the end, the louder whoop was much closer to the recorder that I ended up.
Yeah,
you know,
it
using.
almost sounded like a bark.
Like it was like right there. And so that was cool because what it meant was that there were multiple individuals out there making noise. You know, so it wasn't just one. It wasn't just one thing. And it's not just like one guy who was in his house and said, "Hey, I just watched Finding Bigfoot. I think I'll go make a Bobo yell," or something like that. Because it was from multiple locations and things like that. So that just makes it more fun for me.
I think it's a spectacular capture. Really, I've only heard that moan one time, and I've never heard it again. And it was 17 years ago. You know, It was a long time ago. Okay, let's go from Finding Bigfoot. Okay, now tell us about this.
Sure. This is basically what I did is I took a whole bunch of little snippets of some of my favorite audio, and because basically this was for the Finding Bigfoot episode, Bigfoot and Wolverines. This was what my friend was going to play at the town hall meeting, and she was not scheduled to be on the show at all, but the audio was so cool that Matt actually said to her, "Can I go home with you tonight?" which I thought was very funny. And if you saw the episode, you know, you've seen that section. But basically what they did is they took one of the sections of the audio, and that was the only one that they played, and that was what I call the Isabella howl, which sounds a little bit like the Ohio howl. And so what you'll hear is a series of a couple of clips. And from looking at it, I'm just trying to make sure if this is the child G-rated version of the clip, because there's one that says something that sounds like I'm talking about a sailing vessel at one point. I'm not sure if that is in here or not. And so if it is, I apologize. But I thought I cleaned it out, but we'll know in a minute. So, but it's a fun one, and at least one of the, if you've ever watched Finding Bigfoot, you might be familiar with one of the howls.
Okay, here we go. Wow. Michigan is where I need to go to get recordings. I just made up my mind. That is amazing. All of them. There was one part.
Those were, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, sounded a little bit like a Hilo Bayflower. Right there, I think it was second audio, maybe, was real high pitched, but that was amazing. But go ahead and explain, and then I'm going to play that again.
All right. Those are from and here's the deal. They just said, give us little clips of some of the best stuff that you have from this one area. And I'm like, okay. And so that's why they were little short snippets, but they were from different time periods and certainly different days. But most of those had occurred from August of 2011 until basically April of 2012 was the date of all of those.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I'm going to have to say that Michigan Bigfoot are far more vocal than Texas Bigfoot. I will just have to say that. I just have to work diligently to get anything like that. My gosh.
I've been very lucky. I mean, really, I've been very lucky. But also, I have access, as a BFRO investigator, I have access to a whole bunch of, stories coming in and things like that. And once I've made connections with people, they help me record. I show them how to record. They help me, and then they send me subsequent recordings. And then there's a whole bunch of really good investigators in Michigan, and not just BFRO people, because it doesn't matter. If you're out there trying to do a good job, fantastic. But a lot of really cool people are out there, and like I've got really good friends that have the UP covered. I've got good friends in the southern part of the state that are doing the legwork and getting out there, and I've just been lucky. I really have been to stumble onto some of these areas and to catch some of these vocals that are just astonishing. And then I also get I get things that people send me that I'm like, okay, well that's a coyote, and I get that a lot. Or ones that are I'm pretty darn certain they're catching another person making a howl or something like that. And there's obvious people playing around and what have you, but every once in a while, my goodness, you come up with something that's really, really cool. And I will tell you that every time, I think just about every time I went to that location in Isabella, something happened. Even if it was just something like wood knocks were common, and I don't even count those. But I'm talking like something like a whistle or a howl would happen that was
I think that you found
sometimes
a stronghold.
Even more.
I think you found a stronghold.
Yeah,
definitely.
But The only problem is I no longer have access to that area because the really cool people had to move. And
no.
I know. And so I kind of want to like knock on the door. Hello, has anything weird happened or something like that? But
yeah.
So I don't have access to that anymore. But I will tell you that going up in the UP, I've been on UP expeditions and Wisconsin expeditions, and Wisconsin is crazy, and the Upper Peninsula is crazier than I would have anticipated. I mean, I've been up there on numerous occasions and have like seen. I've seen this stupid single red eye that keeps bugging me on 2 separate occasions, 2 years apart. And that red eye, I like to call it an eye, but I don't know what it was responding to what I was doing, and it was with coordinated wood knocks and howls. And oh my goodness, this summer we found some of the coolest, whether you believe in stick structures or not, I don't care, some of the coolest woven little trees and really cool.
Oh, wow.
The thing is, if nature did it, good on nature. That was pretty fantastic.
Exactly, but I don't think so.
And my goodness, I videotaped all of it because it was so cool. But my goodness, there's so much fun stuff out there. There really is.
Wow. Okay, well, I think we've only got a couple of more minutes, so I want to play another one real quick. Okay, we have a choice between, I think we'll only have time for one more, gate vocal or knock and howl. Which one?
Okay, both of them I really
or
like.
Shut up.
Well, let's do this. Okay, the knock and howl is kind of funny because basically what I was attempting to do is I was attempting to show my friend my new percussion block knocker that I had, which is just, it makes a loud knocking noise, and musicians use it. And so I'm like, hey, look at my new knocker. And I hit it really loud, and we were out in central Michigan in the middle of the woods. I go bang, and moments later we get this response from the woods. And it's one of those, you've got to be kidding that just happened. Unfortunately, it was so early, and I was dumb again. I didn't have my recorder on, but my long-term recorder was running because I had a recorder that was going on there 24/7. So we still captured it. But I felt like a ding-dong for not having it in my hand. Which I'll never make that mistake again. But it's an interesting one. So just play it. It's funny. It makes me laugh.
I wouldn't have expected that.
No, and it was immediate. And I mean, I didn't like clip for time or anything. It was just like I did a bang, and I smiled because I was so proud of myself, and all of a sudden, woof, from the woods, and it was loud. And it was cool because the people that were there, because I was introducing them to this area. I said, you guys got to see this area. You know, lots of cool things happen. And people are like, sure they do. Bang.
Yeah.
And then that noise happened and the howl from the woods. It was just kind of a cool thing.
What an amazing surprise it's been. You know, we have not had anyone from Michigan on yet. We've had researchers from all over the United States over the last 7 years, but we've never had anyone from Michigan. So you're our first, and the most amazing stories are coming out of Michigan. And I would have never thought. I thought it was too cold up there for anything to want to stay there. I mean, I'm just absolutely surprised. Wow. You've been an amazing guest, Jim.
We just have a lot of woods here. So.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I would really like it if you could come back. We'll do a part 2. If that's
Sounds
okay.
like a great idea.
All right. I would love to have you back, and so that we could play some more of your sounds, because that's it for me right there. I love audio. I can look at blob squatches all day, tracks all day, but the audio, it doesn't lie, it doesn't make mistakes. It's there, you know? And, wow. Well, Jim, thank you so much for coming on. and we really appreciate it. We're going to have to go ahead and take off, though.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
All right. Well, good night, everyone, and we are going to call it a night, and we'll see you next week. Next week we have Mark Mills, Part 2. So we got another one that's coming back for Part 2, so we'll have Mark Mills, Part 2. All right, and we'll see y'all later. Have a Happy New Year, and good night.
See y'all next week. God bless.
God bless. I cannot find the outro. I have so many. There it is. So many recordings.